What job can anyone do for themselves, and then as soon as they try and do that same job and get paid for it, requires a 4-year degree? Have you guessed it yet? As impossible as it sounds, yes, interior design. This is why the idea of making somebody get a 4-year degree for interior design is ludicrous, because it is a profession that anyone can actually do for themselves. Not that everyone wants to, but this idea around the profession of interior design, making it a profession as opposed to homemaking, has created a division in our industry. And what it's doing is discriminating against certain parts of our industry, but then what it's also doing is creating a batch of interior designers who are basically dangerous. So let me explain. Interior design has only been a profession for around just over 100 years. So it was Elsie de Wolfe who was the first person to actually be paid for interior design services, commercial interior design services. So as a profession, we haven't been around for long as interior designers, and I think the big thing that a lot of interior designers are fighting against is this idea that we're pillow plumpers, that people think that all we do is choose some pillows and then that's all we do. Of course, as professional interior designers, we know that we do so much more than that, and we wish that people would recognize that. And because of that, there are some people who believe that the only way to make us look more professional is by protecting the title or the practice of interior design. Unfortunately, that passion for protecting the title and profession of interior design creates these barriers into entry into the profession that are unnecessary, and that also cause big problems. And this is what this video is about today, because the people who are pushing for legislation in our industry are not only alienating a large part of the industry who actually are legitimate interior designers. What they're doing is causing a lot of confusion. And what kind of confusion am I talking about? Well, firstly, the title of interior architect. It's not a real title. It's not even a real profession, but you'll see jobs advertised for interior architects. Not that this is actually legal, because most people who are actually looking for an interior architect are actually looking for an interior designer, not a qualified architect who specializes in interiors like myself. So even people who are actively working in the profession are actually causing confusion. So this is not even from the Title Act or from someone protecting the title of interior designer or architect. These are just people who are trying to get someone a position in the field. And you can see here how all of this confusion starts to build even more confusion, not only for clients, but also for other interior designers who say, well, I'm just going to call myself an interior architect because that's what I do. And actually, it's against the law in most places to call yourself an architect if you're not a registered architect, even an interior architect. And this, I've obviously done lots of videos about this in the past, around title acts, around universities advertising courses that are for interior architecture, and then not being very specific or clear at the end of the course that they can't call themselves interior architects, but only interior designers. So you can see here, there's obviously this title confusion, which is, imagine if interior designers and interior architects are confused, imagine clients. Clients are getting really confused about this because they think, well, should I be hiring an interior architect or an interior designer? And then they don't realize that actually they're hiring an interior designer when they're thinking they're hiring an architect. And actually that's where the danger comes in. And this is why this is very dangerous, because a lot of interior designers who push for interior design legislation saying, well, I have a 4-year degree and you don't, not only does this create this us and them scenario, it creates this confusion and misbelief that they're architects when they're not. And that is the real danger, because you just imagine you want to go and see a dentist, and you believe that you're going to see a dentist, but actually it's somebody who is a dental assistant who is who believes they are experienced enough to do dental work on their own without the qualification. So you can see here how by chasing one thing, something else is happening, because these interior designers who are fighting for legislation to protect the title of interior design and the profession of interior design are actually pushing it in another direction, which is causing the danger that they're trying to avert. And what is the danger that they're trying to avert? Well, the main danger is that people who are self-taught designers might potentially cause some errors in your project. I personally disbelieve this because, I mean, I understand where this could come from and why this might be a worry, but in the vast majority, and I'm talking very vast majority because obviously I work with mentoring interior designers, the vast majority of interior designers who do go into the profession of interior design don't want to do commercial interiors. Most of them just want to do really nice houses for really nice people. And the regulations that are coming about, that most people fight for, is to have the same kind of standing as an architect so that they can do structural work, regulatory work, and usually commercial work where you are working usually as part of an interdisciplinary team where you have architects, engineers, landscape architects, interior designers, as part of a broad team to deliver a huge project such as a master plan on or hotel sites. So obviously that's what I used to do when I worked for a hotel design company. So we were working in these interdisciplinary teams, and we had people who were interior designers. I was on the architecture team. Then we had the interior landscape architects, the engineers, all of the fantastic people that we all worked together as a team to create and deliver these projects. The reason why that works, and I suppose in my eyes doesn't necessarily need regulation, is because interior designers, if they are working with an interdisciplinary team to deliver these types of projects, already have the architects there. They will catch the issue because they know where the boundaries of their job, and they're working together as a team with the architects. So this is why I kind of think, well, what you're fighting for with the title and what you're fighting for with the Practice Act isn't really necessary, because the people who actually this title or Practice Act would protect, which would be those specific situations where you would need to deliver, sign off regulations for commercial work, really, hospitals, public spaces, places where there's a lot of regulation involved in passing through a design. However, the vast majority of people who are in interior design work in solo offices, just for themselves, just designing, or maybe with one or two people working with them. So they're not big companies, and they're not large firms doing large commercial projects. They're just, people like me working on house designs and making their clients happy without too much regulation involved in the process of delivering those projects. And so therefore the requirement of a title to do that job is actually unnecessary. And so this is where we start to become this us and them mentality, because if somebody went off and did a 4-year degree to call themselves an interior architect, and then obviously couldn't, and now can only call themselves an interior designer, how do they distinguish themselves from the people who haven't got the 4-year degree? And do they have to? Well, this is the problem, because they've been sold the degree by potentially some legislative areas in usually the US and Canada specifically, where there are areas where you must have that degree in order to practice even interior design or call yourself an interior designer. And this obviously starts to cause not only confusion on the internet, but again, to clients, the main people who they're trying to protect, because all of a sudden these interior designers are saying, well, I'm not like a pillow plumper, I'm more like an architect. Ooh, no, you're not. And this is the problem, because they're not architects, and they're making people believe that they are. And this causes more problem than the problem that they're trying to solve. And so you can see here how the problem of requesting these degrees, which we all know we don't need, I've proven this now with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have come through from other professions and become very successful interior designers. And without needing, these 4-year degrees, which, I have 7 years of degrees to become an architect. But also, I've also now studied interior design, and I know what is required. And it's not a 4-year degree. And this is where it starts to hurt. Of course it hurts when you've just paid hundreds of thousands for a degree that you don't need. A degree that people have made you believe that you needed. And of course you're going to start thinking, well, the us and them, well, I'm more highly educated than you, then how come I can have the same title as interior designer when you have no formal education in the field? And of course, you can see here where this is starting to create a division in our industry, a very dangerous one, because not only is it confusing the people that they're trying to protect, but also it's causing, it makes it feel like you didn't do the degree and I did. But that's not the truth. In most cases, the people who chose not to, the people who don't have the degree didn't have a choice. It wasn't a choice usually not to do, a 4-year degree and have, the luxury of a 4-year degree and to pay that kind of money to do that. Usually it's the opposite. Most people can't do that. Firstly, because they've already done another degree usually, and that this interior design is actually their second degree, which is the vast majority of people who actually come into the industry are people who are changing careers into it, where they've been unfulfilled in another degree, another industry, or another career, and then have moved into interior design because they know that that is their passion. It's something they've avoided their whole life because they were, for one reason or another, always going down the path that they thought should have been what they should have done because their parents told them to do it or whatever. So where do we go from here? So I think the hard part about all of this is that no other profession does this to their people. No other profession says, let's try and alienate half of the people who are in our industry and only focus on the people who are the haves, not the have-nots. And this is very dangerous because it starts to cause a huge amount of discrimination. And I can come from this from a very personal perspective in that I am a first-generation Australian who did come from from poverty, and I wasn't somebody who could afford a degree. Yet, because of my circumstances in Australia, I was so grateful that I could get those degrees, and I was able to complete my architecture degrees because of the system that Australia had. I was one of the first people in my whole family of many generations who got a degree. And I'm grateful for that. But that doesn't mean that everyone can do that. And for example, my brother never finished high school. He tried multiple times, but he never got it. Doesn't mean he's not successful today. It's just that that's the kind of, place I was brought up. We were not the kind of people who went and got degrees because that just wasn't available to us. And yet here I am, 25 years later, mentoring hundreds and hundreds of people to become professional designers. And that was something that I believed at the time, even when I even got into my architecture degree, that wasn't possible for me. And you can see here how many people might not have pursued their dream career because they couldn't have a degree. And you can see specifically for interior design, I know it is different for architecture, but I know specifically for interior design, it's heartbreaking because it's not necessary. You don't need a 4-year degree. And when you look at the curriculum of a 4-year degree for interior design, the vast majority of things that you're going to be studying aren't actually necessary to the day-to-day working of an interior designer. You're getting general knowledge, very good general knowledge. I'm not dissing the degree because I obviously love my design degree. But I don't think that is a necessary requirement for interior design. So let's move on and see why regulation, or by pushing this idea of regulation, can be dangerous. Well, firstly, it excludes the people who can't access a degree. I mean, that's the obvious question, the obvious answer. People who want to be designers can't, because who can take 4 years off, especially once you've got kids, especially once you've got, you know, all these, like a mortgage to pay and all of the other things, who can take 4 years to do something that you don't really need to do, firstly, and then the cost of that, because we all know that these degrees cost hundreds and hundreds, or hundreds of thousands to undertake. Next, it causes that division in our industry, the us and them. Oh, well, you're not a real designer, are you? You don't have a degree. Well, no, that's not true. That's your opinion, because obviously you feel hard done by because you got the degree and you were able to get it. And you can see here, of course, and I understand it from both perspectives, because of course, you know, you went and got a degree. Good for you. And I think that's a fantastic thing. But that was available to you. Don't think that that is available to everybody else. No matter how hard you studied, no matter how rewarding it was to get that degree. I know, I did it for 7 years. It was very hard. But that isn't available to everyone else. And it's not a choice for some people. And even though sometimes we don't believe it was a choice for us, it isn't. It can just literally be an absolute no, because somebody is working 2 jobs just to survive, or has, you know, multiple kids, and there's just no possibility of, you know, doing that kind of study that you know is required if you've done the degree. No one can spend 12 hours on a design when you've got, you know, little babies, because the baby needs you full time. So it's just not possible. So what next? It confuses the public. This is the big one from my perspective. It not only confuses the public, the people you're trying to protect with, obviously Title Acts and Practice Acts, which is the kind of the goal behind these 4-year degrees, but it also confuses interior designers. I was in a meeting the other day where a really reputable interior designer who I really adore, and she didn't know that she couldn't call herself an interior architect. And I think this is madness. And she'd been doing so for 20 years. So it just goes to show how prevalent this is in our industry, that that people don't know. So you're not only confusing clients, you're confusing interior designers as well. And this is, you know, and you can get in trouble. You can, like, it's illegal to call yourself an architect. Doesn't matter if you have a 4-year degree or not. It's the title of architect is protected in 99% of the world. So that can be, you know, a huge barrier to the rest of your career if that is a strike against your name because it gets published, right? Also, the people who are usually pushing the title acts, I don't want to mention the body in America that does push for it, because they're 2 main ones. I'm not going to mention them. You can research them. But most of the time, you'll see that actually some of these people aren't even working interior designers. They have their little title, but what they're actively doing is pursuing title acts. And instead of doing the job of interior design, they're just out there pursuing this rule and regulation to cut off half the people, if not more than half the people in the industry, to be able to do the job, which is very, very, leaves a dirty taste in my mouth. But the other final thing is that it discourages others from becoming interior designers. And this is a big deal because it's a legitimate profession. It's a fantastic profession. It's a growing profession. And yet all of these barriers make people believe that they can't become interior designers. And it's just simply not true, especially, well, in 99% of places. So what I'm calling for here is not control, it's clarity over what is happening in our industry, but also what you actually really need to become an interior designer, and why you would aim for those title acts or practice acts. I've also got other videos on title and practice acts. I can post them on the video below with the links, but if you don't know what they are, go and look at those other videos because go into that into much more detail. But I feel like the real danger is the future of our profession, where we're not having this equality. In fact, what we're creating is huge discrimination, which is I'm going to raise there's a past mentee of mine, a fantastic past mentee of mine called Rukmini Patel, drives this Design for Diversity pledge. And you find her, Google her and find her, Rukmini Patel, interior design. And she is a driver for design in diversity in design. She started this pledge during COVID. And I think it's a fantastic pledge to get behind. It is, something about, pushing. Somebody's trying to do something. And this is just, one interior designer who is really moving things forward, trying to do this, a solo little voice. So go get behind this pledge. Go, and no matter whether you have a degree like me, or whether you are somebody who is just a self-taught designer like the people I mentor, come together, and let's not be divisive in our industry. Let's all be proud of the title interior designer, not interior architect. Let's be proud that we're interior designers, that we all are different. There's such a vast array of us that we all do different things. Yes, some of us might come in and do the plumbing on a project. Some of us might only do finishes. Some of us might do decorating, and that's okay. That is all interior design. And what we need to do as interior designers is educate our clients about what it is that we do, and that's part of our role. We should accept that as our responsibility as designers, not cause confusion, not cause separation or division in our industry, because no other industry does this. Why are we doing it? It's madness. So let's come together rather than come apart, and let's help people see that interior design isn't just pillow plumping. It is a legitimate profession, and not by creating title acts and division or us and them. Let's come together and create something that is, a proud industry worldwide, because, it is a global industry. We work across boundaries, across barriers. And this is where, again, these title acts just don't make sense. They're just causing more and more division. If you're an interior designer who is self-taught, or if you're somebody who wants to become an interior designer and these laws seem to be prohibiting you or scaring you from the profession, have a look at my mentorship, or get in touch with me. I can answer questions for you and help you try to become an interior designer, because in 99% of the world, you do not need a 4-year degree to become an interior designer. So, finishing this off, let's join this movement, join the pledge, find Rukmini, and let's be interior designers and not pretend that we're interior architects.